This video is about Germanic tribes and their role in early European conflicts. Subscribe for more. In the heart of the dense ancient forests of Germania, where towering trees whispered secrets of the past, the air was thick with tension. The chatty tribe gathered in a clearing, their warriors clad in animal hides, faces painted with the vibrant colors of war. Among them stood Arminius, a fierce and cunning leader, admired for his bravery and strategic mind. His piercing blue eyes scanned the horizon, anticipating the arrival of the Roman legions that dared to encroach upon their lands. The Romans, led by General Varus, sought to expand their empire beyond the Rhine. The disciplined formations, gleaming armor, and ruthless tactics had earned them a fearsome reputation across Europe. Yet, the Germanic tribes were no strangers to conflict. They had their own legends of valor and resilience, and they were prepared to defend their homeland with every ounce of strength they possessed. As the sun dipped below the treetops, casting long shadows that danced across the forest floor, Arminius stood at the center of his men. He knew the Romans would arrive with their cavalry and infantry, but he possessed a secret that could turn the tide in their favor. He had covertly allied with the Cherusci tribe, who had long harbored grievances against Roman oppression. Together, they planned an ambush that would strike fear into the hearts of the invaders. "Robbers!" Arminius shouted, his voice carrying through the trees. "Today, we stand not only for ourselves but for our ancestors who fought bravely before us. The Romans believe they can take our land, our freedom, but they underestimate our spirit. We will show them the strength of the Germanic tribes." Cheers erupted from the warriors, their voices echoing through the woods. Among them was Thusnelda, a fierce shield maiden who had earned her place among the warriors. With hair as wild as the forest itself, she wielded a sword with precision, her heart filled with the fire of vengeance. Her family had suffered at the hands of the Romans, and she yearned for retribution. As night fell, the atmosphere shifted. Trees stood sentinel around them, their leaves rustling like whispers of long-gone spirits. Arminius and Thusnelda exchanged determined glances. They shared a bond forged in tragedy and a burning desire to protect their way of life. Together, they would face the challenge ahead, a challenge that had the potential to alter the course of history. Meanwhile, across the Rhine, the Romans were preparing for battle, confident in their superiority. General Varus reviewed his troops, pacing before his battle-hardened legionnaires. "Tomorrow, we march into the heart of Germania," he declared. "These barbarians will learn the price of defiance." The soldiers nodded, their faces a mix of anticipation and bravado. They had heard tales of Germanic ferocity, but underestimating the enemy was a cardinal sin in the Roman military. Each soldier carried the weight of their ancestors' conquests and the glory of Rome on their shoulders. They were the embodiment of order amidst chaos, ready to crush any semblance of resistance. As dawn approached, the tension in Germany grew palpable. Arminius and Thusnelda led their forces deeper into the shadows of the forest. The ambush site was meticulously chosen, a narrow ravine where the Romans would be vulnerable. Arminius had studied the Roman formations, understanding their weaknesses and exploiting them to his advantage. "Stay low and remain silent," Arminius instructed his warriors as they took their positions. The forest was alive with the sounds of nature, a stark contrast to the impending violence. Birds chirped innocently, unaware of the storm brewing in the heart of the woods. Thusnelda took her place beside Arminius, her heart racing with fervor. Together, they waited for the sound of marching feet. As the first rays of sunlight broke through the canopy, the Romans began their approach, marching with unwavering discipline. The ground trembled beneath their boots, and the clanking of their shields echoed through the trees. Arminius signaled to his warriors, their breath held in anticipation. Suddenly, the Roman vanguard entered the ravine, their formation tight and unyielding. Arminius raised his arm, a signal to unleash hell upon the unsuspecting invaders. With a deafening roar, the Germanic warriors surged from the underbrush, ambushing the Romans from all sides. Chaos erupted as the clash of steel rang through the air. Thusnelda fought valiantly, her sword dancing with deadly grace. She moved like a tempest, striking down Roman soldiers one after another, fueled by the rage of her ancestors. The surprise attack shattered the Roman lines, catching them off guard. Panic spread among the ranks as the relentless Germanic warriors pressed forward, determined to defend their homeland. Arminius fought alongside Thusnelda, his strategic mind guiding the onslaught. He had anticipated this moment for years, his heart pounding with exhilaration as he witnessed the tides turning in their favor. The air thick with the scent of sweat and blood, he felt the power of unity coursing through him. But as the battle raged on, a chilling realization struck him. The Romans were not without their own cunning. Reports of their reinforcements began to trickle in, a reminder that the fight for freedom would be far from simple. The sound of horses galloping echoed through the trees, heralding the approach of additional Roman troops. Arminius knew that time was running out. He had ignited the spark of rebellion, but now it was up to him to fan the flames. "We must hold our ground. Drive them back," he roared, rallying his warriors as the tide of battle teetered on a knife's edge. The forest floor became a battleground, a chaotic tapestry of courage and desperation. Warriors fell on both sides, but the Germanic tribes fought with an intensity that surged through their shared history. They were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for a future free from oppression. As the sun reached its zenith, casting a golden light over the battlefield, Arminius felt the weight of destiny upon him. This confrontation was not merely a skirmish, it was a struggle that would ripple through time, impacting generations to come. The outcome of this day would resonate across Europe and beyond, laying the groundwork for alliances, enmities, and the very formation of nations. But even as victory seemed within reach, a shadow loomed on the horizon. Reinforcements for the Romans were not just coming, they were led by an unexpected foe, one that could change everything. The central conflict was only just beginning, and the fate of Germania, and perhaps all of Europe, hung in the balance. With drums of war echoing in his heart, Arminius turned to Thesnilda. "We cannot falter now, our fight is far from over." Their eyes locked, a silent vow exchanged amidst the chaos of battle. Unbeknownst to them, the ramifications of their actions would stretch far beyond the forest, intertwining with the fate of empires yet to rise. As the dust of the battlefield settled, the stakes grew ever higher. The winds of change were blowing through Germania, but the true test of their resolve awaited. Would they triumph against the might of Rome, or would the relentless machine of conquest crush their dreams of freedom? The clash of swords and the cries of warriors echoed through the trees, signaling that the first chapter of their struggle had only just begun. The broader conflict of Europe beckoned, a tapestry woven with the threads of ambition, courage, and the price of liberty. What lay ahead would forge not only the destiny of the Germanic tribes, but would also set into motion the very forces that would shape the history of Europe for centuries to come. And as smoke curled into the sky, the question lingered: could they defy the Roman Empire, or would they become another forgotten tale in the annals of history? In the heart of Germania, where shadows danced with the promise of war, the mystery of their fate awaited resolution. The next step would determine the course of history itself, a battle not just for territory, but for the very soul of a continent. The clash intensified as the Romans, shaken by the ambush, attempted to regroup. The disciplined formations that had once seemed impenetrable now teetered, and an air of uncertainty hung thick in the forest. Arminius fought with relentless ferocity, his sword striking true, each blow fueled by the cries of his fallen comrades and the desperate need to reclaim their land. As he pushed through the fray, he spotted Thesnilda battling a trio of Roman soldiers, her movements fluid and precise, the embodiment of fierce determination. Arminius' heart swelled with pride as he witnessed her resilience. She seemed to tap into the very essence of the forest around them, drawing strength from the roots and earth beneath her feet. But victory was fleeting, and the sounds of approaching hoofs pierced through the cacophony of battle. The Romans were not just retreating, they were regrouping, preparing for a counter-offensive that could crush the momentary advantage the tribes had gained. "Reinforcements," a warrior shouted, his voice leaden with dread. "They bear the eagle standard. The 10th Legion is upon us." Arminius clenched his jaw, feeling the weight of impending doom. The 10th Legion was renowned for its ruthlessness, a hammer of Rome that would not only retaliate but exact revenge for the humiliation of their advance being thwarted. "Warriors, listen," Arminius called, rallying his men amidst the chaos. The urgency in his voice cut through the noise. "We cannot let fear take root. We are the guardians of our ancestors' legacy. We will not fall to tyranny." The warriors nodded, their faces stained with dirt and blood, determination hardening their resolve. Thesnilda, catching her breath, joined Arminius at the forefront, her eyes gleaming with ferocity. "Let them come," she declared, her grip tightening around his sword. "We shall meet them with the storm of our fury." As the Roman cavalry thundered toward them, the light glinted off their polished armor, a sight that had broken many men's spirits. But today, on this hallowed ground, the Germanic tribes prepared to embody a tempest. Arminius signaled to his archers hidden in the trees, their bows drawn taut, arrows aimed at the heart of the oncoming iron tide. He shouted, and a volley of arrows rained down from the branches, striking the first ranks of the Romans. Horses reared and soldiers fell, momentarily disrupting their charge. Seizing the moment, Arminius led a flanking maneuver, surging to meet the Romans head-on. Thusnelda followed closely, her battle cry echoing through the forest as she joined the fray. The initial shock of the ambush had given way to a ferocious melee, a dance of life and death that reverberated with the weight of history. The clash of swords rang like thunder, each strike a testament to the resolve of those who fought. Arminius felt invigorated, responding to the ebb and flow of battle like a conductor guiding an orchestra. He could see the Roman general Varus in the distance, orchestrating the lines with an iron fist, desperation etched across his face as his men faltered against the relentless onslaught. "Focus on the general," Arminius shouted, his voice rising above the din. "Cut off the head of the serpent." With renewed purpose, Arminius and Thusnelda pushed through the chaotic mass of soldiers, cutting through the enemy ranks. They fought back to back, a whirlwind of steel and fury. Every Roman soldier that fell fed their rage, every shout of defiance bolstering their courage. But amidst their fury, Arminius began to see cracks in their formation. The Romans were rallying, pushing back with a brutal discipline that threatened to overwhelm. The forest, once a sanctuary, now trembled with the weight of the struggle, and the very ground beneath them became a testament to the bloodshed that marked this day. Just as victory appeared within reach, a thunderous roar cut through the air as the 10th Legion charged forward, their numbers overwhelming. They surged like a tide, pushing the Germanic tribes back into the shadows of the forest. The tide of battle had shifted, and Arminius felt the despair creeping into his heart. They fought valiantly, but the relentless Roman soldiers pressed on, forcing the tribes to fight with their backs against the trees. Arminius cried, sensing the desperation in the air. "We must regroup." But as they retreated, Thusnelda's fierce spirit would not allow her to abandon the fight. She turned, deflecting a spear aimed at Arminius, a swift movement saving him from a fatal blow. The spark of rebellion flickered in her eyes. "We cannot allow them to claim our ground. This is our land. We will not yield." Her words reignited a fire within Arminius. He couldn't let their struggle end in defeat, not when the very spirit of Germania hung in the balance. "Then we shall make this ground our own," he roared, rallying his warriors. "We fight for our people, for our children, for freedom. The Romans may have numbers, but they do not have our heart." As the Germans pressed forward again, they channeled their collective fury. Arminius led the charge with Thusnelda at his side by side, embodying the spirit of their ancestors. The forest echoed with the sounds of battle, but the tide was turning. They were no longer just fighting for survival, they were fighting for a future, for a legacy. As Arminius swung his sword and struck down another Roman soldier, he saw Varus struggling to maintain control. The Roman general's face twisted in anger, but there was a flicker of fear behind his eyes. The Germanic tribes were not mere savages, they were fierce warriors united by purpose, and they would not be easily quelled. And then, as if summoned from the depths of the forest itself, a horn blared, announcing a new wave of Germanic warriors led by the Cherusci. They emerged from the shadows, fierce and wild, their arrival shifting the momentum of the battle. Arminius' heart soared, his alliance had come to fruition. Together, he bellowed, the sound reverberating through the clash of blades. The Germanic forces surged forward, the combined might of the tribes overwhelming the Roman lines. Thusnelda fought with the fervor of a tempest, each clash of her sword cutting down the enemy, a whirlwind of vengeance and determination. Arminius, fueled by her bravery, found renewed strength as their enemies faltered. The Romans, once the embodiment of order and control, now faced the chaos of a united front. The unforgiving battle stretched on, the once pristine forest transforming into a landscape of chaos and carnage. The air was thick with the stench of sweat and blood, and the cries of the wounded echoed like a haunting melody. But still, Arminius and Thusnelda pressed forward, their spirits unyielding, their resolve as fierce as the war raging around them. Yet, even in their triumph, a shadow loomed over the battlefield. The Roman reinforcements were relentless, and with each passing moment, the tide threatened to turn once more. Arminius felt the weight of history upon his shoulders, the fate of his people resting in the balance. As the sun began to dip beyond the treetops, casting a golden hue over the battlefield, Arminius knew that the night would not merely be a respite. The struggle was far from over, and with the Roman legions regrouping, he could almost feel the specter of defeat creeping back into the fray. "Tonight, we must fortify," he shouted, rallying his warriors once more. "Tomorrow, we fight again. We will not let this day be in vain. We will not let our spirits dim." But as they turned to regroup, a chilling realization dawned on him. The Romans were not merely soldiers, they were an empire built on conquest and control. This moment would ripple through time, a deepening conflict that threatened to engulf not just Germania, but all of Europe. As darkness enveloped the forest, Arminius and his warriors prepared for the battles yet to come. Fires of war burned bright, and as they gathered for the night, the weight of destiny loomed. What would tomorrow bring? Would they rise against the tides of oppression, or would they fall to the relentless advance of Rome? With hearts ablaze and the cries of their brethren echoing in their minds, they braced for the next chapter in a saga that would determine the fate of nations. The winds whispered promises of glory and peril, and within the heart of Germania, the struggle for freedom had only just begun. The darkness settled like a shroud over the battlefield, the cries of the wounded and the scent of blood mingling with the damp earth. As the last embers of the sun faded, casting a pallid glow through the trees, Arminius gathered his warriors around a makeshift fire, their faces illuminated by flickering flames. Each warrior looked weary yet determined, the weight of the day's struggle etched into their expressions. Thusnelda stood beside him, her breathing heavy but steady, her eyes flickering with the fire as reflection. They had fought fiercely, but the battle was far from over. Tonight we must fortify, Arminius declared, his voice steady despite the exhaustion weighing on him. We will not allow the Romans to take our ground. We are more than fighters. We are the embodiment of our ancestor spirits. We will strategize, regroup, and come back with the dawn. The warriors nodded, the tension in the air thick with a mix of fear and defiance. They knew the Romans were formidable, but they also understood that in unity lay their strength. Thusnelda stepped forward, her fierce demeanor unwavering. We cannot simply wait for them to attack again. We must strike before they can gather their strength. The element of surprise is ours, and we must seize it. Arminius considered her words, the firelight casting shadows across his face. Thusnelda's spirit was infectious, igniting the embers of resolve in his heart. You were right, he finally conceded. Let the Romans think we are retreating, let them believe they have won the day. In the darkness, we will emerge like ghosts from the forest. As they began to plan their next move, the sound of distant hooves reached their ears, reminding them of the relentless Roman presence. The 10th Legion would not rest, and Arminius could almost feel the vengeful gaze of General Varus upon him, seeking retribution for the day's humiliation. Tonight, we will create diversions, Arminius said, the firelight dancing in his eyes. We will send smaller groups to disrupt their camp, set their supplies ablaze, sow confusion among their ranks. When dawn breaks, we will strike with the full force of our unity. Thusnelda, her spirit undeterred, rallied the warriors. We will not only fight for our land, but for our very identity. We are not mere barbarians, we are a people with a legacy. The fire crackled, mirroring the fervor ignited among the warriors. As the night wore on, they moved like shadows through the dense forest. Small groups of warriors, led by Thusnelda and other trusted leaders, slipped silently through the trees, their footsteps muffled by the carpet of leaves. Each warrior understood the importance of this mission. It was not just about revenge, but about striking a decisive blow against the might of Rome. Meanwhile, the Roman camp lay sprawled in the clearing, tents illuminated by the dim glow of fires. The soldiers, weary from battle yet dismissive of the Germanic threat, gathered in small groups, recounting the day's skirmishes and boasting of their conquests. General Varus stood at the center, reviewing his plans for the following day, unaware of the storm brewing on the periphery of his encampment. Tomorrow, we will crush them once and for all, Varus declared, his voice booming over the din of laughter and bravado. They think they can resist the might of Rome. They will learn the price of defiance. His men cheered, their spirits bolstered by his confidence, but the Roman general felt a twinge of unease. He had seen the ferocity of the Germanic tribes, and he understood that underestimating them was dangerous. As the moon hung high, a series of explosions shattered the night's tranquility. Fire erupted from the Roman supply tents, and chaos ensued as the Germanic warriors descended upon the camp, arrows raining down from above while warriors surged from the shadows. Thusnelda led the charge, her battle cry piercing through the confusion. The Romans were caught off guard, scrambling to defend their territory as the Germanic tribes moved like a whirlwind through the encampment. Arminius fought alongside Thusnelda, their swords clashing against the Roman shields, unyielding in their pursuit of freedom. The night transformed into chaos, a cacophony of clanging metal and cries of pain, each side vying for dominance. Push forward, Arminius shouted, rallying the warriors as they pressed deeper into the heart of the Roman camp. The element of surprise was there as Germanic warriors poured into the encampment, igniting the flames of rebellion and vengeance. But amid the chaos, the Romans quickly regrouped, their discipline shining through even in the face of disorder. Varus, realizing the threat posed by the Germanic counterattack, called for reinforcements, rallying his soldiers with a commanding presence. Stand your ground, fight for Rome. As the Germanic tribes fought valiantly, the tide began to shift. The Romans, bolstered by their numbers and training, pushed back fiercely against the Germanic onslaught. Amidst felt the pressure mounting, the realization that their chance to strike a decisive blow was slipping away. He called to Thusnelda, who was battling fiercely against a Roman centurion, her movements quick and precise. "If we can cut through the center, we can disrupt their formation and turn the tide." Thusnelda nodded, her resolve unwavering. Together, they surged forward, their warriors rallying behind them. They fought with ferocity, the blades gleaming in the firelight as they pushed through the Roman ranks, each clash of metal echoing the heartbeat of this struggle. But as they broke through, Arminius felt a sharp pain in his side, a searing agony that threatened to steal his focus. Glancing down, he saw the crimson stain blossoming against his tunic, the mark of a Roman blade. Gritting his teeth, he fought through the pain, refusing to let it diminish his spirit. "Arminius," Thusnelda shouted, concern flashing in her eyes as she dispatched another enemy. "Stay with me." With renewed determination, he forced himself to move, to drive forward. They were on the brink of success, the Roman lines wavering beneath the ferocity of their assault. But just then, a horn blared from the far side of the camp, a sound that chilled Arminius to the bone. "Reinforcements," he whispered, dread settling in his gut. The Roman lines were about to be bolstered, and their moment of advantage was rapidly fading. "Fall back, regroup," he shouted over the clamor, his voice strained but urgent. They had caused chaos, but the fight was far from over. They needed to retreat to the forest, to regroup and strategize for the next assault. As the Germanic warriors fell back into the shadows of the trees, the Roman reinforcements surged forward, their armor gleaming menacingly in the moonlight. Tides of war were shifting once again, and Arminius could feel the weight of destiny pressing upon him. "Tomorrow, we regroup and return to fight again," he assured Thusnelda, despite the pain coursing through him. The resolve in her eyes mirrored his own, a fierce determination to reclaim their freedom. "We'll fight for our land, for our people," she responded, her voice steady and unwavering. "We will not let this moment slip away. This is our fight, and it has only just begun." As the dawn began to creep over the horizon, the battle-scarred warriors clung to their hope, their hearts ignited by the promise of a brighter tomorrow. The war was far from over, and the forces of Rome loomed larger than ever. But in the depths of their spirit, they understood that their fight was not just for their land, it was for the very soul of their people, a legacy that would echo through the annals of history. With the fires of rebellion burning bright within them, Arminius and Thusnelda prepared for the storm to come, the fate of Germania and all of Europe hanging precariously in the balance. Would they rise to reshape the course of history, or would they become a fleeting tale amidst the relentless march of empires? The dawn promised new challenges, and as shadows danced on the edge of the forest, their destinies awaited the next act in the saga of war. As dawn broke over the horizon, casting a soft light over the remnants of the battlefield, the warriors of Germany gathered beneath the canopy of ancient trees. Their faces were etched with the scars of the previous night as ferocity, yet the fire of resolve continued to flicker in their hearts. Arminius stood at the forefront, his side still aching from the wound, but his spirit unbroken. Thusnelda was by his side, her fierce gaze scanning the tree line, ever vigilant for the approach of the Roman legions. "Today is the day we reclaim our destiny," Arminius declared, raising his sword high. "Last night we proved our strength, we must build upon that victory. We will return to the battlefield as one united force." Cheers erupted from the gathered warriors, their voices echoing through the trees, resonating with the spirit of their ancestors. The forest, a witness to their struggle, seemed to hum with anticipation. "Remember," Thusnelda spoke, her voice steady despite the tension that hung in the air, "the Romans may have numbers, but they lack the fire that fuels our fight. We are not just warriors, we are the embodiment of freedom." As the sun ascended, illuminating the forest with golden light, the Germanic tribes prepared for their next assault. They were not merely fighting for land, they were fighting for identity, for a future unshackled from the oppressive grasp of the Roman Empire. Each warrior knew that the stakes had never been higher. The outcome of this battle would ripple through time, shaping the very fabric of Europe. As the morning wore on, Arminius and Thusnelda led their warriors deeper into the forest, employing the terrain to their advantage. They moved with stealth, knowing that the Romans would underestimate their capacity to strike again so soon after the previous night's chaos. The soldiers of Rome were regrouping, their confidence restored by their overwhelming numbers, but the tide of history was often unpredictable. Form into smaller units, Arminius instructed, his strategic mind racing. "We will launch a series of surprise attacks, disrupting the supply lines and drawing them into the forest where we can fight on our terms." The warriors nodded, their faces resolute as they divided into smaller bands, ready to employ the tactics of guerrilla warfare that had always been part of their heritage. Arminius felt the pulse of their ancestral spirits within him, driving him to lead them into the fray one more time. As they moved toward the Roman encampment, the distant sound of clanging metal and the booming voices of Roman officers reached their ears. The Germanic warriors crouched slow, hearts pounding with the thrill of anticipation. Thus Nada, her eyes locked on the Romans, felt the fierce drive for vengeance coursing through her veins. "Remember the faces of those who fell," she whispered, her voice a fierce promise. "We are their avengers." With a visceral battle cry, Arminius and his warriors surged forward, emerging from the shadows like a tempest. Arrows flew from their bows, striking true against the unsuspecting Romans. The initial shock sent ripples of confusion through the enemy ranks, and the Germanic warriors fought with everything they had, driven by anger and a desire for freedom. "Push them back," Arminius roared, his sword cleaving through the air. The chaotic sounds of battle echoed through the trees, mingling with the cries of brave warriors on both sides. Thasnother fought alongside him, her every movement a blend of grace and deadly precision. Her sword a blur as she struck down her foes. But the Romans were not easily defeated. As they regained their composure, the disciplined formations began to push back against the Germanic onslaught. Arminius could see General Varus rallying his men, the once chaotic camp transforming into a cohesive unit determined to reclaim their lost ground. "Fall back, regroup," Arminius shouted, recognizing that they needed to adjust their strategy. They couldn't afford to be drawn into a prolonged engagement where the Romans would have the advantage. The warriors fell back into the shadows, their spirits unyielding despite the physical toll of the fight. As they retreated, Arminius knew he had to change the momentum of this battle. Their initial surprise had shifted to chaos, and chaos would only benefit the Romans. "We will not give in. We will regroup and hit them again at their weakest point," he urged his warriors. "We strike with precision, with purpose." Thasnother stood beside him, unwavering in her resolve. "We will tire them out. They cannot maintain their advantage forever. We have the heart of the forest, the support of our ancestors. Let us use it." In the heart of Germania, under the thick canopy of ancient trees, they devised a plan. They would create distractions in multiple areas, drawing the Romans thin before striking at their supply lines. The warriors knew that it was not just a battle of strength, but of wits and endurance. That night, they moved with stealth and purpose, igniting small fires and sowing confusion within the ranks of the Romans. The enemy soldiers, exhausted from the previous day's battle, were forced into a defensive posture. Arminius and Thasnother led their warriors in a series of rapid strikes, each one a testament to their unity and resolve, each successful ambush chipping away at the Roman morale. "Let them chase shadows," Arminius declared as they struck a supply wagon, raiding the Romans' provisions while always retreating back into the safety of the forest. The Germanic tribes became a whirlwind of vengeance, reaping the rewards of their daring attacks and striking fear into the hearts of their foes. As days turned into weeks, the Germanic tribes continued to engage the Romans with relentless ferocity. Each skirmish took its toll, but slowly the Romans began to falter, the once indomitable legion shaken by the tenacity of the tribes. Arminius felt the tide turning, whispers of rebellion spread like wildfire through the Roman ranks, doubt creeping in where there had once been certainty. "Today, we meet them head-on," Arminius announced one fateful morning, the air alive with anticipation. "We will not hide in shadows. This battle will decide our fate." The Germanic warriors rallied, their spirits ignited by the thought of striking a decisive blow against their enemy. With swords raised and faces painted in war colors, they marched toward the Roman encampment, their hearts synchronized in a rhythm of defiance. As they approached, Arminius could see the Romans preparing, their formations aligning, armor glinting ominously in the sun. But this time, they would not falter. This time, they would stand united. With a roar, the Germanic warriors charged forward, the clash of steel ringing through the air like the tolling of a bell. Arminius fought fiercely, his focus unwavering, each strike a testament to the courage of his people. Thasnother fought by his side, embodying the spirit of their ancestors, her sword a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. The battle raged, relentless and chaotic. Both sides fought with unparalleled ferocity, but the momentum continued to shift. The Romans, once a symbol of unyielding power, began to falter under the relentless attacks of the united tribes. Arminius felt the surge of victory coursing through him as he pushed forward, determined to forge a new destiny. And then, amidst the melee, he spotted General Varus, desperately trying to maintain order among his ranks. Arminius knew that to win decisively, They had to cut through the center to confront the very symbol of Roman authority. Thus, Nilda, he shouted over the din with me. Together, they charged toward Varus, cutting through the chaos as they carved their path. The Roman general's eyes widened as they approached, panic flickering for the first time in his steely demeanor. As they reached him, the confrontation became a flurry of sword strikes and deflections. Arminius, fueled by the collective strength of his people, felt invincible. This Nilda moved with grace, her every blow calculated and fierce. But Varus was a seasoned warrior and the battle was brutal. The clash of steel echoed like thunder, but ultimately, it was the spirit of the Germanic tribes that couldn't be quelled. With one final strike, Arminius drove his sword into the heart of the Roman general, a decisive blow that sent ripples through the enemy ranks. With Varus's fall, chaos erupted among the Romans. The relentless pressure from the Germanic tribes began to overwhelm them, and they faltered, retreating in disarray. Arminius turned and raised his sword high, the roar of victory echoing through the forest. Today, we reclaim our land. Today, we write our destiny. He called, his voice carrying the weight of history. The Germanic warriors erupted into cheers, their hearts ablaze with triumph. They had fought not just for survival, but for freedom, for their very identity. As the last of the Roman soldiers fled, the spirit of Germania soared. They had not just won a battle, they had ignited a revolution that would resonate across Europe for generations. The embers of their struggle had turned into a flame, one that would be remembered as the stand against tyranny. Arminius and Nilda stood amidst the remnants of the battlefield, their faces smeared with dirt and blood, yet shining with the light of hope and victory. They embraced, united in their triumph and in the legacy they had forged together. The echoes of their fight would carve a path through history,